There's no doubt that the new monarchs of the United Kingdom are in their twilight years, so speculation has run rampant about what happens when they die. In the case of King Charles' death, the title change of the Queen is clear. King Charles III was officially crowned King of the United Kingdom at the long-awaited coronation ceremony at Westminster Abbey on May 6th, with 20 million Britons tuning in to watch the historic event take place.
What happens when the fiercest stand for justice isn't made from behind a podium or under the crown's weight, but in the quiet strength of a mother protecting her child? Can a simple exchange at a school gate ripple through the very core of the monarchy?
Like millions of parents around the country, the Princess of Wales will be preparing to send her kids back to school this week. Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis will all be heading to their 7K a term Lambrook School in Berkshire for their studies.
The moment that changed everything. That brisk March morning, with nothing more than a few words spoken softly yet firmly, Catherine, Princess of Wales, showed the world that true power doesn't always wear regalia. It doesn't always unfold in palatial halls or press briefings. Sometimes it reveals itself in everyday moments, in instinctive acts of protection, in choices that seem personal but echo publicly. That morning was one such moment. A moment that didn't just stir media speculation, it forced a reckoning inside the highest echelons of Britain's royal family. At first, it seemed like an overprotective parent merely exercising their right to privacy. But what followed was far from ordinary. What followed was a chain reaction that exposed fractures, uncovered secrets, and, some say, led Prince William to do the unthinkable: sever the long-guarded financial ties between the monarchy and Queen Camilla's extended family. How did it begin? With a recording, a voice from the past, and a mother who finally said, "Enough." They say history turns on grand battles and signed decrees, but sometimes it turns in silence, in the quiet flicker of a mother's protectiveness. That's how this story begins. Not in Parliament or palace halls, but outside a school where a camera lens crossed a line.
The Princess of Wales has paid a visit to a school in Bath in the UK, taking part in the On Track to Achieve programme.
Catherine had just returned to limited public life after months of silence, recovery, and, if sources are to be believed, deep personal re-evaluation. The nation had worried. Conspiracies had swirled. But what the world didn't see was the storm brewing beneath the surface, inside the palace and inside her own marriage. That morning, when a photographer tried to capture her children without permission, something inside her snapped, and quietly, firmly, she intervened. Witnesses say she didn't shout, she didn't demand, she simply made it clear her children were off limits. The moment was brief, but it traveled. Within hours, whispers of tension within the royal family grew louder. Royal correspondents noted an intensity in William's demeanor during engagements. Advisors leaked phrases like, "No more games," and "decisive action." Then came the leak, one no one expected, and yet one some say was inevitable. A voice recording. Old. Crackling. Quiet. Andrew Parker Bowles, Queen Camilla's former husband, speaking into a microphone in the stillness of his countryside home. A voice message intended only for his children. A reflection. A confession. Not scandalous, not angry, but honest and devastating. In it, he spoke of a woman he once loved, of a marriage that slowly slipped through his fingers. He spoke not of betrayal in the usual sense, but of subtle manipulations, financial maneuvering, relationships restructured behind closed doors, charities used as channels, and above all, ambition cloaked in grace. He never used the word strategy, but he didn't need to. The tone said everything. The pauses between words, the heaviness of sentences like, "I often wondered if I was ever the destination, or merely a stepping stone." That recording was never meant to see daylight, but it did. How? Some blame an accidental cloud upload. Others point to disgruntled former staff. Some suggest it was deliberate, timed to coincide with growing internal pressures around Catherine and William's role in the future of the monarchy. Regardless, once it surfaced, the damage was swift. The recording circulated in private circles at first, advisors, aides, a handful of journalists. Then came the wider leak. Podcasts picked it up. Encrypted forums dissected every word. And then, somehow, it reached Prince William. And everything changed. Prince William's silent revolt, a decision that shook the palace. When Prince William first heard the recording, those close to him say he didn't speak for hours. He listened alone, played it twice, then asked for a printout of his mother's last public letter. A letter in which Diana warned of the dark corners within the institution she married into. He read it alongside the transcript of Andrew's voice, as if searching for alignment, and found it. For William, this wasn't just about Camilla. It was about patterns, a system, a lineage of silence and sacrifice disguised as tradition. And it was about protecting his own family from becoming the next casualty. What followed wasn't a speech or a press conference. It was something far more royal and far more radical. He summoned his inner circle, not the usual senior staff, but a select group of financial experts, legal advisors, and longtime aides who had stood with him since his military days.
William has spent over 7 years in the military, starting as an officer cadet, and was later stationed on the quiet island of Anglesey in North Wales for search and rescue helicopter training.
No titles, no ceremony, just a question. What exactly are we still paying for? The answer: over £5 million a year, funneled through obscure trusts, property grants, advisory fees, and educational stipends, all directed toward Queen Camilla's extended family. None of it illegal, all of it discreet. The money went to distant cousins managing heritage preservation projects, to educational bursaries with ambiguous recipients, to consultants advising on country estate operations. Some hadn't been seen publicly in years. Some had no formal role at all. For years, it was simply how things were done, a legacy of supporting the extended royal apparatus, quietly, honorably. But for William, it now looked like something else entirely. He issued the order quietly, a single-page directive, signed and sealed. All financial support to Queen Camilla's extended family was to cease immediately. No more stipends, no more retainers, no more backdoor allowances buried in charitable paperwork. By the time the order reached the palace financial office, it was already too late to delay. The tap had been shut off. Inside the palace, the reaction was instant and ice cold. Camilla's team was blindsided, not consulted, not warned. Even King Charles, it is rumored, was only informed an hour before the formal notification was sent. And by then, it was done. William had made his move. Fallout, turmoil, and a royal reformation. A single-page directive was all it took to upend centuries of tradition and awaken the deepest fractures within the British monarchy. When Prince William issued the unprecedented order to cease all financial support to the extended family of Queen Camilla, it wasn't merely an administrative decision, it was a cultural earthquake. What began as a fiscal line item quickly became a symbol, one that challenged the values underpinning royal legacy, loyalty, and the very direction of a monarchy under transformation. For generations, discretion was the lifeblood of palace operations. But this was different. The stillness of palace mornings gave way to a storm of quiet alarms. Aides and secretaries, long practiced in controlled silence, now whispered behind closed doors and darted through ancient hallways with furrowed brows. The corridors of power, once guided by predictability and precedence, had become fault lines of uncertainty and shifting allegiances. What Prince William had done was, at its core, an assertion, not only of fiscal responsibility, but of moral clarity. And though the public explanation cited streamlining and ethical modernity, the implications reached far deeper. Within hours of the announcement, the palace's inner machinery was in motion. Emergency briefings were held behind velvet-draped doors. Senior staff divided into hastily formed camps, the air around them thick with anxiety and conviction. The Silence faction, populated largely by senior courtiers and those who had served during the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, believed in enduring tradition.
Queen Elizabeth II was the longest-reigning monarch in British history, claiming the British throne for 70 years. Presiding over 7 decades, her reign has witnessed many significant moments that have shaped human history.
Their motto was survival through stillness. They argued that controversy, like bad weather, passed quickest when ignored. Any public comment, they feared, would only fan the flames. "You don't acknowledge a family fracture in the morning papers," one long-serving advisor was overheard saying. "You wait it out. The crown always outlasts the storm." But not everyone agreed. A newer generation of palace staff, many appointed during William and Catherine's growing influence, had different ideas. They formed the transparency faction, a group buoyed by the belief that silence equaled complicity. To them, William's decision was not merely necessary, but overdue. The monarchy had to be more than ritual and robes. It had to be relevant. A monarchy seen to be protecting questionable financial entitlements, even tangential ones, was not one that could hold the nation's trust. "It's about optics, yes," said a younger communications officer, "but it's also about identity. Who are we now? Who do we serve?" In the background, another group quietly emerged: the middle camp. Neither wholly traditionalist nor radically reformist, they pushed for a soft reset, one grounded in acknowledgement without spectacle. They advocated for a controlled narrative, one that respected the crown's dignity while admitting the need for evolution. Their proposal, a closed-door summit, followed by a carefully crafted address, striking a tone of reflection and progress without self-flagellation. Meanwhile, a discreet internal poll was circulated among palace employees, a rarity in itself. The questions were blunt, almost confrontational. Should the monarchy remain silent and weather the fallout? Or should it address the public directly and reframe its image through transparency? The results, though unofficial, painted a palace in flux. The majority leaned toward some form of public response. Silence, they feared, was no longer a shield, it was a weight. At the center of this tempest stood King Charles III, monarch, father, and husband. For a man who had spent a lifetime navigating emotional restraint under public scrutiny, the events of the week brought back old wounds and fresh dilemmas. Camilla was more than his queen. She had stood by him when few did, when scandal and shame nearly dismantled his public standing. Her family, though never formally part of the royal fold, had been woven into the palace's private tapestry over the years. Cutting them off, Charles believed, was not just about finances, it was about respect. But William was not acting out of rebellion. His decision had been meticulous, principled, and deeply aligned with the values he envisioned for the crown's future. In a private note to his father, he cited the importance of public trust, of ensuring every royal expense could be justified in the court of public opinion. It was not a rejection of Camilla, he insisted, but a reaffirmation of duty. Caught between love and legacy, Charles convened a series of tense meetings. First with Camilla and her legal advisors, who stressed that while they accepted the decision, the manner of its delivery had been unnecessarily blunt. Camilla reportedly felt blindsided, especially given her years of service and quiet integration into royal life. She felt erased, a palace insider confided, not as queen, but as a woman who had worked hard to be accepted. The second meeting, with William and Catherine, carried a different tone, polite but resolute. William did not back down, but he did offer to help manage the fallout through a broader modernization initiative. Catherine, known for her deft diplomacy, proposed the idea of a palace-wide review of discretionary spending to be presented as part of a wider strategy rather than a targeted cut. Charles, weary but composed, listened. His heart, said one aide, was heavy, but his crown was heavier. In a carefully worded media statement days later, Charles attempted the impossible: to bridge a divide without acknowledging its full depth. He praised William's integrity under pressure, signaling support for his son's conviction. He also emphasized Camilla's decades of devotion to the crown and its people, without directly addressing the funding controversy. It was a rhetorical tightrope. Neither side left fully satisfied, but the message was clear. The monarchy would not fracture publicly. The monarchy, by design, resists rapid change, but moments like this reveal its capacity, or lack thereof, to evolve under pressure. William's move may have caused upheaval, but it also sparked a long-overdue conversation about the future of the crown. No longer could royal entitlements be seen as hereditary entitlements for extended family. The line between duty and indulgence was being redrawn. For Charles, the path ahead is narrow. He must protect the dignity of a wife who helped restore his public image, while empowering a son determined to modernize the throne. For William, the challenge lies in balancing reform with reverence, a monarchy that stands for something, but also stands together. As for the palace, the whispers have quieted slightly. The urgent glances remain. But beneath the tension, there is also clarity. The crown is not breaking, but it is bending. And in that bending, it may yet find a new strength. Camilla's counter. Backed by seasoned legal counsel, Camilla moved swiftly. The argument in her briefing notes was straightforward. The financial ties were not gifts, but part of charitable and historical commitments.
Camilla was left smitten with a Jack Russell Cross puppy as she opened a new garden at a world-famous animal shelter.
They were not discretionary perks, but socially meaningful projects. Bursaries for underprivileged students, funding for heritage properties, support for veterans. Her team issued carefully crafted statements under the headline, "Context, not contest." The goal: reinforce her public service credentials, mental health, veterans, environment, while clarifying that the king's wife had not personally gained from the funds. In carefully staged appearances, a hospital wing visit, an advocacy panel, a veterans reception, Camilla gradually reinserted herself into public view. Each moment felt designed to reassure two audiences, the public and the reluctant traditionalists within Buckingham Palace. As media coverage spiraled, attention turned far beyond London. In Australia, a government inquiry into the monarchy gained momentum. If the crown can fold under internal tension, can it still represent us? Canadian MPs borrowed the storyline to argue for vetting the use of royal symbols in domestic ceremonies. Caribbean leaders saw the dispute as fuel for their own independence agendas. Royal watchers noted that what started as a family matter was now testing national identities, and that King Charles had more at stake than ever before. Meanwhile, William wasn't idle. As his team drafted the proposed Royal Finance Charter, Catherine quietly polished its language. It would bind the royal family to transparency and fiscal responsibility, offering yearly audits of charitable expenses with a public summary. It didn't forbid private wealth, it simply demanded accountability. The charter was bold, but strategically cautious. It addressed Camilla's concerns about charitable continuity by distinguishing between personal family trust payments and institutional royal funding. Drafted behind the scenes, the document landed with purpose. William signed it, Catherine reviewed it, and advisors prepared for its formal unveiling. Its existence was itself liberation, an overture of reform, fractures and bridges, family diplomacy. Luckily, not all fissures had hardened. Princess Anne, always the pragmatist, quietly brokered cautious meetups, family dinners, short phone check-ins, unannounced visits. She encouraged the continuation of small traditions like shared holidays and secret birthday greetings. It didn't heal everything, but it kept dialogue open. Charles, to William's surprise, agreed to a private retreat later that week at Sandringham. No aid involvement, no press, just father and son. While Charles still felt torn, he saw in William's resolve the leadership he had fought to pass on, a possible renewal of the monarchy, built on honesty rather than instinct. On the day the finance charter was released, the palace press office launched a carefully orchestrated communications campaign that sought to reshape the narrative and steer public perception toward a monarchy ready to embrace transparency and modern relevance. Recognizing the need to counter months of speculation and behind-the-scenes tension, the campaign was designed to be both strategic and symbolic, intertwining messages of responsibility, compassion, and continuity. Prince William and Catherine took center stage with a joint press briefing that focused on two key themes: childhood mental wellness and fiscal transparency. This pairing was deliberate. The couple aimed to connect fiscal responsibility, often a dry, technical subject, with something deeply human and emotive: the well-being of future generations. William spoke passionately about the importance of creating a royal household that not only lived up to public scrutiny, but also championed the health and emotional security of children across the UK and the Commonwealth. Catherine underscored the role of transparency as a foundation for trust, emphasizing that openness was not a sign of weakness, but a vital step toward integrity in public service. Their message was clear: the monarchy was not retreating, but evolving, grounded in values that resonated with a modern society. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla took a different approach by releasing a reflective and measured op-ed in a leading national newspaper. She wrote eloquently about the enduring importance of charitable legacies within the monarchy's work and argued that public accountability was a strength rather than a vulnerability. Camilla's piece subtly acknowledged the criticisms that had surfaced, but framed them within a broader narrative of service, dedication, and adaptability. By focusing on charity work that impacted real lives, she reminded the public that the monarchy's worth was measured not in titles or privileges, but in tangible contributions to society. King Charles also added his voice to the campaign with a carefully worded statement celebrating what he described as the next chapter of our monarchy. His words were steeped in hopeful pragmatism, an acknowledgement of the challenges faced, but also a reaffirmation of the crown's enduring role in a changing world. Charles struck a tone that sought to unify rather than divide, signaling that the monarchy was ready to face its critics while preserving its historical dignity. The media's response was predictably mixed. Some commentators lauded William's foresight and Catherine's eloquence, seeing in their efforts a promising sign of a monarchy more attuned to the expectations of 21st century citizens. Others criticized the move as royal oversharing, fearing that too much transparency risked eroding the mystique and tradition that had long defined the institution. Yet even critics grudgingly conceded one point: the monarchy was now engaging with the public in a way it hadn't before, fighting its battles with clarity and openness rather than retreating behind a veil of silence. As the calendar turned toward summer, the shifting dynamics within the royal family became increasingly visible through public events and appearances. Camilla hosted her annual garden party, a fixture in the royal calendar that had long symbolized continuity and tradition. This year's event was notably well attended and carried an unmistakable warmth, even if it was modest in scale compared to previous years. It was as if Camilla was quietly repositioning herself, not as the centerpiece of grand ceremonies, but as a dignified figure whose value lay in personal connections and committed charity work. Observers noted she appeared more focused on intimate moments of service, preferring to engage in hands-on efforts rather than public spectacle. In contrast, William and Catherine launched a new fatherhood initiative that was met with broad applause. Their focus on emotional security and parenting support aligned seamlessly with their earlier messaging, reinforcing their vision of a modern royal family deeply engaged with social issues. Catherine's work, in particular, gained new momentum as she emphasized education and mental health as pillars of the crown's future mission. Her advocacy for integrity, emotional well-being, and transparency signaled a shift away from purely ceremonial roles toward a monarchy that sought to actively shape public discourse and policy. King Charles, too, maintained a presence, though quieter and more measured. His public appearances grew more purposeful, imbued with a soft but resolute dignity that suggested a monarch mindful of the evolving landscape, but confident in his role as its steward. The tone from the palace was one of recalibration, a royal family seeking balance between tradition and progress, unity and individuality. Camilla remained somewhat in the background, her role less prominent, her presence more circumspect. Though she was not yet comforted by the changes, she felt heard in ways she hadn't before. The quiet acknowledgement of her contributions and the measured respect she received marked a subtle but significant shift in palace dynamics. William's reforms, though still in draft form, were gaining traction. Widespread expectation within palace circles was that the new financial guidelines and transparency measures would be codified in the coming year, representing a tangible legacy of his leadership. At the same time, discussions about the Commonwealth's future and the monarchy's place within it cooled somewhat, even as Republican sentiment remained a simmering pressure. What emerged from the turmoil was not a monarchy unscathed, but one willing to evolve, an institution prepared to step out of the shadows of silence and speak through concrete actions. The crown's strength was no longer measured by its ability to remain untouchable or inscrutable, but by its capacity to listen, adapt, and embody the values of the people it serves. The monarchy, in the age of information, faces a simple truth. Trust thrives on transparency. What William and Catherine started may prove to be the turning point between what the crown once was and what it must become. But questions remain. Will the Royal Finance Charter survive the inevitable media scrutiny? Can Camilla rebuild her role quietly and honorably, or will her influence be forever diminished? And most crucially, will King Charles find a way to love without losing power and to govern without forsaking family? The next chapter may not be written in gilded halls. It might unfold in everyday moments, the kindness of a royal visit, the clarity of a public report, the respect shown to everyday people. As Buckingham Palace finally begins to lean toward light, the crown stands at a new crossroads. One path leads to an institution reformed and relevant, the other back into the shadows of tradition and silence. But one thing is certain: the world has heard Catherine's voice, and it won't go quiet again.